and welcome to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson here at the Culinary Institute of Canada. Today I'm here with Chef Paul Peters, and today we're going to talk about oysters. Chef Peters is the chef advisor at Dalvey by the Sea, and he's going to give us a couple of recipes. What are we doing today, Paul?
We're going to start off today with a apple and jalapeno mignonette. Just going to put it on oysters on the half shell.
Awesome. So what do we need for that today?
Well, we have all our ingredients here. We need some apple cider vinegar, which in a mignonette you need that punch of acidity. Apples and jalapenos. We got some shallots, some honey, and some fresh cilantro.
Okay, I can't wait. The jalapeno is going to give it a little bit of heat to contrast the apple cider a little bit, and that sounds good. So what do we start?
Well, what we're going to do is we'll start off with our apple cider vinegar.
Any particular kind or?
Apple cider I think works best, but you can use your favorite vinegar, red wine, sherry, white wine, cool. whatever works best.
Right on. So what else do we need? We need apples?
Yeah, we'll, for this recipe we're using Granny Smith, but you can just use your favorite apple, whatever.
The Granny Smith's going to give it a little bit of sour. If we had a sweeter apple, would that help the?
It would help a little bit, yeah, with the sweetness of the sauce. You do, again, you want that punch because the oyster is rich and salty, so you want to be able to cut that a little bit.
So you want to taste the oyster, but you're just kind of garnishing the flavor a little bit to help it out.
Absolutely.
A little bit of flavor. Right on. And the jalapeno, there's something about jalapenos as you're dicing that. The jalapenos, be careful when you get it on your hands, right? Do you kind of?
Yeah, it's the oils in the jalapenos. They will stick to your skin, so you want to be careful when you're touching your face or transferring it to anything. So you got to be very careful to wash your hands.
Yeah, you get the oils, yes, because it stings a lot. I don't know if you've done that before, but I've tried that, and it's not very good.
I think we've all done that.
So the oysters we're using today, we're focusing on those a little bit today. So we're using Malpec oysters. Now you see in boxes they come in all different varieties and names and taglines and stuff. What is the real difference in the oysters?
Well, on PEI, all oysters are Malpec seed, so they're all essentially the same. But as they get deposited in different waters, the climate, what's around them, the current in the water, it all shapes the oyster and it gives it a totally different flavor. Right,
and the way they grow forms the shapes. So you see in the markets they have sales on standards and choice oysters. What's the real difference with the choice between the standard and the choice oyster?
A choice oyster is always has a great hinge on it. So what you're kind of looking for is somewhere where you can easily get your knife into. On a standard oyster, a lot of them are hooked down.
Right.
So they're not a real good for, say, an oyster bar, or if you're doing it.
Kind of awkward to get the knife in without slipping and jagging. And I noticed the oyster comes with a bit of a natural cup on it. Is there a bottom and a top side to the oysters, or are they specifically designed that way?
There is. The cup side is, the swoop is the bottom, and then the flat top just comes off, and you can set it down and it holds all the juices and everything. So it's all nice and cupped together. Okay, so what do we got in here right now? We got the apple cider vinegar, and we got about a quarter of Granny Smith apple diced up. Yep. We also have some fresh red pepper that we've chopped up ahead of time.
And that's to add a little bit of color to it more than...
And also a little sweetness as well.
Okay. So we get the sweet and the vinegar and the acidity and the natural salt from the oyster, which we'll add in all the flavors.
And just for some extra sweetness, we also have some honey.
A little bit of honey. Okay. So we're going to stir all that. Do you want me to stir that together?
Sure.
And you want to...
Also, we have some fresh jalapeno.
Okay. We were talking about the oils in there. Is there anything else about the jalapenos that we should know about when we're working with them?
Well, what we like to do, we like to take the seeds and all this white pith out. That's where a lot of the heat is.
Okay.
And you don't want somebody to crunch down on that seed.
Right. So we just want to use the meat of the jalapeno pepper.
Yeah. So we're just taking a knife and we're just running along the sides. And we'll run along the top. And we just pull all that out, and you can just even take your knife and just scrape a little bit just to get.
So you could use the seeds if you wanted to. It's just that there's
Sure.
so much extra heat in there, and the real heat comes from the oil of the pepper.
In lots of recipes, like if you were making a chili or something like that, you would probably leave all the seeds in because you're cooking it over a long period of time. But where this is raw, I think it's better to take that punch of heat out.
Yeah, and if you wanted to use a hotter pepper like a habanero, you could use that in this recipe as well. Would just give it a little bit extra heat. But why did we choose the jalapenos?
Jalapenos, just because they are a milder heat, and they have a lot of flavor to their heat. It's not just a punch of heat to your face.
Okay, okay. And we're still talking about oysters. You're putting some, what's that, green pepper in there now?
This is the diced jalapeno.
Oh, the jalapeno.
Yeah.
Lots of that in there. I like the heat. Okay, so we're gonna start up with some fresh cilantro. And what's the cilantro going to add to the recipe?
Cilantro is like a parsley, but it's got that kind of lemony citrus flavor to it. So it's just going to add a punch of freshness.
Good. I like freshness. So we'll mix all the main ingredients together, and then we'll pop up the oysters, and right now we're gonna take a quick little break, and when we be right back, we're gonna shuck some oysters and put the mignonette together.
Fast-paced, close-knit,
enlightening, hands-on,
hands-on
learning. It's yours, like, yeah, I made that was me. You want the experience, you want the passionate instructors, you want the hands-on trading, you want to learn, not just from a book, but from your own hands to learn all that. It's just fantastic.
Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. Here with Chef Paul Peters. Today we're making oysters mignonette, and we're adding some cilantro to our mix of Granny Smith apples, diced red pepper, diced jalapeno peppers, and apple cider vinegar. We're also going to add a little bit of shallots, Paul.
Yes, shallots will just give it that little bit of oniony touch and a little bit of crispness.
Okay, not a whole shallot, or just kind of?
No, just about a half, I would say. That's a fairly large one.
Right. Okay, so we're going to add that. Then we're going to mix this all together. And how long should this sit together once you get it all mixed in the bowl?
About 20 minutes to a half an hour. Just time to let the flavors come out.
What are some techniques you use when you're shucking oysters?
Well, primarily what you want to look for is a good, clean hinge. So you want to make sure you can get your knife in easily.
And what about your other hand for supporting the oysters?
Usually I just like to use a rag or a cloth of some sort. There is a special board that you can get that you slide the oyster in.
So it doesn't, so it's secure?
Yeah. And what you want to do is go right at the hinge with your knife. So stick your knife in.
So right at the hinge where the two shells meet, the bottom and the cup.
And this is about technique. It's not about power. It's not about trying to drive the knife in. Right. It's just getting it in and giving it a nice turn.
Okay, just a twist.
Just a twist.
Just a twist to the wrist.
And then just follow your knife all the way down.
And all along the top shell?
Along the top shell.
And what are you trying to do there?
There's a muscle that runs on the top of the shell.
Okay.
And on the bottom of the shell. So when you're running down the top, you're cutting that muscle.
Yeah.
So when you get the oyster shell off, you want to just go underneath again and just cut that muscle. Just
to remove it from the shell, so when you slurp them,
just to release
they kind of slide right off.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want me to just put the mignonette on the oysters as you're shucking them?
Yeah, we're just going to add a touch of black pepper.
Okay.
And with this, you don't need to add any salt. There's a lot of natural salt in the oyster.
So we're not trying to oversaturate our sodium contents. Just all about seasoning, right?
That's it.
This is your recipe. I'm gonna let you taste it first to make sure that it's what you think it's gonna be. And this is something you would find at on your menu in your restaurants?
Very simple. I like to use very simple ingredients, very fresh ingredients, and highlight what you're doing. So this is just going to highlight everything that's natural about the oyster.
Right. So we're going to do a couple of different varieties. What else are we going to do on today's show with oysters, Paul?
Next, I guess we're going to do a Rockefeller.
Oyster Rockefeller?
Which is a classic style of baked oyster.
So we're going to do a cooked oyster, because a lot of people have some issues with problems with the raw oyster. So if they have it cooked, sometimes it's a little bit easier for them to take in.
Yeah, it's a texture thing. It's when they're cooked, it's very similar to a mussel or a clam.
We're going to go for break, and when we come right back, we're going to do some oyster Rockefeller.
Fast-paced, close-knit,
Enlightening, hands-on, hands-on learning. It's yours, like, yeah, I made that, that was me. You want the experience, you want the passionate instructors, you want the hands-on training, you want to learn, not just from a book, but from your own hands to learn all that. It's just fantastic.
Community organizations and not-for-profit groups are invited to submit their announcements for free promotion on the Community One bulletin boards. Visit us at bellalliant.net/community1.
Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm here, Chef Andrew Nicholson at the Culinary Institute of Canada. I'm here with Chef Paul Peters, Dalby by the Sea, and today we're doing PEI oysters. So far today, Paul, we've done apple jalapeno mignonette with oysters on the half shell. Now we're going to do a little bit of oysters Rockefeller. Can you tell us a little bit about the recipe that you've got for today?
Oysters Rockefeller is a pretty classic oyster dish, typically done with spinach, bacon, cream. You can use any green. Something that's good for sauteing, maybe like a watercress or arugula would be great.
Something like that?
Would be perfect. Typically, we just start sauteing all the ingredients, and we top it on the oyster, and then we put it under the broiler to get it nice and bubbly and golden brown.
Okay, so what are we going to start with? I notice you got the burner on there getting warmed up, so what are we going to start with?
We're going to start with our bacon, get it rendered down a little bit.
So we're not starting with any grease in the pan, we're just going to start with the bacon. So what's the purpose of starting at this point with the dry pan?
When you start with a dry pan, especially something high fat, it's going to render out some of the fat, and that's what we're going to use to actually saute the rest of
our
vegetables.
So we're not adding any extra fat to it, we're just going to use what's naturally there.
Yeah.
Right, awesome.
And the bacon also is going to give that nice, salty, kind of smoky flavor.
Right.
So you can see that now the fat is starting to drip out of the bacon.
Right. So at what point would you start adding vegetables, and what would you put in next?
What we're going to start with is our shallots and our celery. And it's okay to add it now because you don't want your bacon to get too brown and your pan to get too brown before you put everything in.
Right. You want to keep it nice and clean and whitish.
That's it. We don't want too much color on this recipe.
Okay. So about how much shallots and what's the kind of going by feel, or how many we're doing? This recipe is doing about a dozen oysters.
That's about one medium shallot. And we're going to give one rib of celery. And you want these to be fairly fine dice. You want them to cook fairly quickly.
Cook evenly, but you don't want to have big chunks of oyster or celery with your oyster.
That's it. You want it to be nice and smooth and velvety in your mouth. You don't want that big crunch and chunk.
Okay.
To this, we'll add 1 clove of garlic, just finely minced.
Garlic's good with everything.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to sweat those off. Not really any color. We're just sweating them off in order. And what's the sweating kind of doing, and what's that mean?
Sweating is just kind of releasing all the flavors and melding everything together. And the term we kind of use is we want to saute it till it's translucent. So just till it loses kind of that solid color.
Okay.
And that means it's kind of nice and tender, and you're not going to get that real crunch when you're getting into it.
Right. So we've got some butter there on the side. Are we going to use that in today's recipe, or just kind of at the finishing touch?
We're going to finish off with some butter just for that extra richness, and it'll kind of pull the sauce all together.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we're going to add in some fresh baby spinach.
Okay.
And we're just looking also to wilt this down. So
Okay.
we don't need to cook it a whole lot. What we're going to add, just for some moisture to the pan as well to help with the wilting, is some lemon juice.
Okay.
So just the juice of half a lemon.
Now, could you use some lemon zest in this recipe as well, or lime if you didn't?
Absolutely. You could even use orange, would work well as well. Any kind of citrus fruit.
Citrus fruit, depending on your mood.
Absolutely. Just this is just a guideline. This is a classic recipe.
Okay.
But you can put your own spin on it. As I said, with the watercress, you could use pancetta or prosciutto instead of bacon.
Okay.
We're just going to move this around a little bit. And into that, we're going to add some heavy cream.
Okay.
And this is just going to kind of pull everything together.
So it's a creamy base, kind of a sauce you're making in essence. You're kind of creating all your flavors with all your vegetables and the smoky bacon and the saltiness, and then you kind of enhance the flavor of the oyster itself.
The Rockefeller, it's meant to be a very rich, creamy dish.
Okay.
It was named after the famous millionaire Rockefeller in the United States. So they want it to be very rich and creamy. We're going to add, just for some nice licoricey, anisey flavor, some fresh tarragon.
Okay. So once we get the sauce done, and then we put it on the oysters, we don't actually cook the oysters prior to adding this saucy mixture for the richness. And this is kind of a cooked dish, so how does that kind of?
Well, you don't want to overcook the oyster because you don't want it to get really tough.
Oh, okay.
So what we're doing is just topping it and just more flashing it. So you just want it to the point where it's going to be just done.
Right.
And that way it'll be a lot smoother and creamier.
Okay.
So we don't need this chopped too fine. We just want it rough chopped because we do have the big chunks of spinach in there.
Right.
We're just going to add a little more cream to loosen this up a bit.
And we've got the saltiness of the bacon and the oysters, so do we add extra salt or any other seasonings as well?
I'm not going to add any salt at all.
Okay.
But I will add some fresh black pepper.
Okay.
I like quite a bit of black pepper, but again, it's personal preference.
And what about cheese on this? Is there any cheese? There's no cheese in your...
There's no cheese in my recipe, but some Parmesan or maybe some Asiago would go pretty well with this.
And just sprinkle it over top, and when you before you broil
on
it?
top of the breadcrumbs. We're going to add some fresh ground breadcrumbs to this as well.
Okay.
So we're looking pretty much where we have to be on this. 4 or 5 minute saute.
So it doesn't take very long once you're doing it, and you just want to render the fat off the bacon. You don't necessarily want to make bacon bits or make it crisp.
No, that's it. We're just trying to pull some fat out of the bacon so we can saute our vegetables.
Okay.
So this is looking pretty good. We're just going to add a little bit of butter into this. We don't want too much butter.
Smells awesome.
It's a really classic dish. I mean, everybody that has had this, even if they don't like oysters, it's something they can relate to because of the bacon and the cream and the spinach.
Yeah, typically when we think oysters, we think eating them raw. So, but a lot of people, it's a texture thing, right? That's what we find, and then it's kind of, so if you can cook it serve it in a hot form or cooked, it kind of relieves that pressure a little bit of having the raw oyster. And so we got that all together. So now we just put your mixture on top of the 12 oysters we got shucked from previous, just so they're ready to go when the sauce is ready.
So all we're looking to do here is just get a nice even coating, even topping on each oyster, and just spread it out a little bit with the spoon, just so it cooks nice and evenly.
Some Rockefellers you get are packed with spinach, but you've got the bacon and the celery and the shallots kind of coming out as the main ingredients in this. And
I really wanted to focus on more of the richness and the creaminess. This is really not meant to be a salad or a healthy meal. We're going for the full-on richness.
Right on. Looks great. It smells awesome. Very excited. So when we get these all plated up, what's the next step? We're gonna go from here. We're gonna do. This is where you might put your cheese or whatever on if you had some. Is on the top.
We're gonna go with just a nice fresh breadcrumb, and that'll give us that nice golden brown and crispiness on the top that we're kind of looking for in a Rockefeller.
Okay. Okay.
So we just want a nice light, even coating on each one. We're not looking to put a whole bunch of bread on here.
Right. So we're putting this into what type of an oven or?
You can use just your home oven, or if you have a convection oven. Home oven we'd like to see at about 400.
So nice and hot, almost broiling.
Yep, and you can broil it as well, but you just have to make sure you watch it a lot closer if you're broiling.
Yep. You don't want to burn it. You just want to toast the breadcrumbs or melt the cheese, what have you, or whatever's going on.
That's it, and you still want a bit of that creaminess to the oyster. You don't want it too firm.
Right. And then the oyster will be cooked from the heat of the shell, but it won't be overcooked. You'll still have that nice.
That's it. And putting the breadcrumbs on top, it kind of gives it that dryness to the top, but then all the liquor on the bottom from the oyster keeps it nice and moist.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to put that in the oven for
just 1 to 2 minutes. Just keep a close eye on it.
At about 400 degrees, and just kind of brown off the top a little bit. Okay, you put that in the oven, and we're going to take a quick break here in Kitchen Uncovered. When we come back, we're going to plate up the oyster Rockefeller, and we're going to try some oyster shooters.
Fast-paced, close-knit,
Enlightening, hands-on, hands-on learning. It's yours, like, yeah, I made that, that was me. You want the experience, you want the passionate instructors, you want the hands-on trading, you want to learn, not just from a book, but from your own hands to learn all that. It's just fantastic.
Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. Today we're doing oysters. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson of the Culinary Institute of Canada, here with Chef Paul Peters. Stand up. Today we're doing PEI oysters. We started off with some apple and jalapeno mignonette, and we've just taken the oyster Rockefeller out of the oven. So where are we at now, Paul?
This is exactly what we're looking for. Nice and golden brown. It's nice it's dried up a little bit around the edges. But it's still got that plump, juicy oyster in the center for moistness.
Right on. And these are meant to be served hot, right? So right out of the oven, onto the plate.
Right to your guests.
Out to the guests. Okay. Good. So we're going to plate that up a little bit, and then what are we going to do?
After this, we're going to start our margarita oyster shooter.
Margarita oyster shooter. That sounds awesome. So what do we need for that?
Fresh shucked oysters. We're going to go with tequila.
Any particular brand or just?
Just your favorite, whatever you're close to, whatever you drink normally. And we're going to go with some fresh squeezed lime in that and a little bit of hot sauce.
Okay, so that's pretty simple, kind of a Friday night kind of thing.
Yeah, very simple. It adds a little flair to your dinner party. People can talk about it and get excited about it.
Okay. These oyster Rockefellers look awesome. That looks great. So, oyster Rockefeller, Paul Peters. Okay, we got some martini glasses here. We're just going to stack these up on the cutting board, and you kind of...
So we're going to go with kind of a classic margarita theme. So what we really want to do is take a lime, and a classic margarita always has a salted rim. Okay. So we slice it, and we just want to add a little slit in it. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do is rim the glass. And all rimming the glass is doing is just making it moist enough so we can get the salt to stick to it.
Okay. Any particular salt we use? Just
we're using sea salt today, but regular table salt would work.
Just to give it a little bit of
just
saltiness when you...
Yeah, it's a little coarser, the sea salt, and it gives it a little different punch.
Okay. And the lime, of course, will garnish both your tequila and the oyster as well.
Perfect.
So we shuck these ahead of time, and again, we're using small choice oysters, but you could use mediums or large depending on your appetite. Or
yeah, with this recipe, especially this one, where the oyster's going into the glass and you're swallowing it, it's a little easier with a smaller oyster.
Smaller oyster,
yeah. Especially for a first-time oyster person.
Right on.
So we're just going to pat this in the salt. That's okay if it's a little uneven, or we don't need it to be perfect.
So can I put the oysters in the glass at this point?
Yeah, just at the bottom of the glass, then we'll add our tequila.
Any particular amount, or we're just gonna...
you can just put,
them all in, not put them all in one, I guess, should I?
Yeah, one per.
That was for me. I like to share.
I'll take the extra tequila.
Okay.
So what we want to do with a margarita, it's tequila and lime juice. So we're going to wedge up some fresh lime and just squeeze it in.
Mm-hmm. And would you use the lime zest for this recipe at all, or just the...
You can as well. Like you could peel it, like with a channel knife, and just hang it over the side.
Hang it over the side as a garnish?
Yeah. So we will add our tequila in. And this, we're not looking...
for any amount? Just to...
Yeah, just a taste.
Help the oyster swim a little.
Yeah. You could do this in a full shot if you want as well, depending on the atmosphere of your get-together or your party.
Mm-hmm. So could you do this with anything other than... This is kind of designated for tequila, but you could use...
Sure, you could use vodka. You could do like a Caesar or a Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
You could use rum. So we're just going to do a little squeeze. Just one
lime juice in there.
One in each. You don't want the lime to overpower it. You still want to taste the tequila.
Okay. And that's pretty much that.
That's pretty much all there is to that.
Thanks, Chef Paul Peters, for teaching us about PEI oysters. For any information anybody wants about the recipes we've done on the show today, check out our website. Until next time, I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson at the Culinary Institute of Canada. Thanks for watching.